All right, everybody, welcome back to Twisted History Podcast, and this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. We all carry around different stressors, both big and small. When we keep them bottled up, it can start to affect us negatively. Therapy is a safe space to get things off your chest and to figure out how you can work through whatever's weighing you down. Annie and I have benefited from therapy, particularly after 9/11. It's probably something that saved our marriage, something that we didn't believe in necessarily before we tried it out, but it's something that paid us back huge, right? If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge, which is a very important part of that I don't think they stress enough. Because if you don't trust or like the person that you're talking to on the other end, there's a good chance you don't open up to them. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/twisted today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp. HELP.com/twisted to get 10% off your first month. That's it. We're back. Twisted History is back. It's myself. It's the Saint right next to me to my immediate right if you're watching us on Rumble. And then to the Saint's immediate right, it's my good friend Jeff Vibert. You may know him as Vibs. And then to Jeff's immediate right, a lot of immediate rights here. It's the opposite of NASCAR. It's John Kelly. Handsome John is back on the ones and twos. We're going to talk about horses today. This is a twisted history of horses. But before we do that, I got a great DM. A great DM from me. So, there are certain DMs that I get that are, fine and dandy and stuff, but some of them strike a chord with me, and this one certainly did. It's from a kid named Ben Carter. Large, huge fan and longtime listener. Wanted to give you an interesting story. I had a friend of mine reference the mass shooting at Luby's in Columbine, Texas, and I immediately knew what he was talking about because of the Twisted History podcast, and that's when he told me a story. I'm going to take a break right now from Ben's letter to tell you that's exactly why we do this, to make everybody more interesting, or to hear that they said, I got a Jeopardy question because of you, you asshole. I love to hear stories like that. Unfortunately, some of these stories that we give you are absolutely terrible, right? They're the worst stories in the world. Luby's is a perfect example.
Yeah.
I mean, not that nothing good came out of Luby's. I think 24 people wound up dying. But still, so take that with a grain of salt when I say I love DMs like this, because I don't like to talk about mass shootings, but I love the fact that we're teaching. Before I go on with the guy's story, for those of us who are listening who didn't listen to us back in 2021 when we did the Twisted History of Fast Food, I'm going to tell you what the fuck he's talking about with Luby's Cafeteria in Killeen, Texas in 1991. I realize I have to do that because 1991 is now 24 plus 9, 33 years ago.
Don't do that math.
Yeah.
Don't do that math.
Oh, man. It just
I graduated
hurt.
high school in 91.
Yeah. And so, but there are a lot of people, particularly people at Barstool, who weren't alive for this, so they have no, historical reference personally. And if you don't listen to this podcast, shame on you, but maybe you'd never heard of it before. But Luby's was a terrible day. It's a stain on American history. It was when an unemployed guy ran in and shot and killed 23 people. He didn't run in. He drove his Ford Ranger pickup truck through the window of this restaurant called Luby's Cafeteria. The driver was a merchant marine named George Hennard. He stepped out of his truck after he went through the front window, and he just began firing a pistol. Hennard began stalking around the store, gunning down victims in the restaurant, even dragging customers out from underneath the tables. Witnesses said that the gunman seemed to favor shooting women over men.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah.
I kind of remember that.
And then Hennard had a history
behavior.
He's made misogynistic threats in the past, often calling women vipers and stalking neighbors. Again, we don't want to have fun with the idea of 24 people dying, 23 plus Hennard, but it does make a point with women being vipers. You girls can be fucking evil. So he had shot and killed 23 people, 10 of whom with single shots to the head at point-blank range, and he wounded another 27. The murderous rampage lasted for 12 minutes. That's 12 minutes of hell, man, before Hennard was shot several times by the responding police, but they didn't shoot him fatally. It was he himself who shot himself in the head with his final bullet. At the time, that massacre, the Luby's Massacre, was the worst mass shooting by a single gunman in the history of the United States. But that was 1991. Since then, the 23 body count, 24 if you count the shooter, has dropped to number 6 on the list. So since 1991, Luby's has gone from number 1 to number 6. Number 1 with a bullet, Jesus, I shouldn't have said that, but number 1 by far is when 64-year-old Stephen Paddock opened fire on the crowd attending the Route 91 Harvest Music Festival on the Las Vegas Strip from the 32nd floor suite in the Mandalay Bay Hotel. We kind of remember that. He barricaded himself in. Another terrible fucking day in American history.
Awful.
He fired more than 1,000 rounds, killing 60 people and wounding another 413.
Didn't it take them? I kind of remember taking them a long time to break into the hotel room, but he was already dead for like 30 minutes or something, right?
Yeah, there was something wild
was
about
something
how he
weird.
was barricaded in there.
Yeah.
It was almost like from a movie. But so that was the biggest mass shooting. Again, like I say, number one with the bullet. Just apologies for that.
They talk about I'm sorry to interrupt you, but they talk about how it's becoming more prevalent recently with shooting and stuff. But back then, you just didn't hear about them, because I remember that same year as the first shooting, the Lurleen one, we had one of our mailmen shot up our local post office. And I remember it hadn't happened since 1986. I think the 1986 was the first one where it was like mass casualty, and the one by us was only maybe 2 or 3 people, which is still awful. But that's where the term "going postal" went.
That's what I was about to ask about.
Yeah.
Going postal. Wasn't there a bunch of like mailmen shootings that
I
happened?
think the big one was in '86, and I think
Yeah.
he killed I don't remember how many people.
There
it
was a string of them that came up. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then that came up with the whole going postal
But that's
thing.
not like they talk about shootings like this as something new. It
Yeah.
was happening back in the '80s too. You just didn't have the mass media the way you do now.
Yeah, it wasn't as publicized. But so anyway, Luby's did happen in 1991, and like I said, it was the worst up to that time, and now it's number 6 on the worst.
Yeah, when
mass shootings
when
in-
Columbine happened. Granted, I was like
was so-
6,
Yeah.
but I thought that was the first ever like mass shooting or school shooting.
Right.
Obviously,
Kind of
Luby's and other stuff. There's
Yeah.
of the
yeah,
modern era.
Yeah,
But it was
Luby's
kids.
is-
This was kids. Columbine was kids.
Okay.
Like that was a high school. That was
Yeah.
right.
But I remember when I was at Citigroup, and someone can check the date on this,
For which?
because I had an intern who went to the University
Oh.
of Colorado. Nice kid. He actually was one of the guys that ran around with the buffalo. You know when they run the buffalo out?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like 4 kids holding him
amazing.
with the chain,
Yeah.
and they run with whatever, Buffy the Buffalo, whatever the fuck the guy's name is. And so this kid came in, and you looked at his resume as you would for all the interns, and he had attended Columbine. And the years matched up, and sure enough, he was there that day, and he had survived it. And that was like an eerie
I
thing
think we
to
had
say.
sure.
we either
Yeah.
just got married or it was like
Yeah.
Little
was-
Rock, right? Colorado wasn't that it? It's in Little Rock, I think. Because I
Something
always think
Rock.
of the South Park creators went to that school.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, because they're interviewed in Bowling for Columbine, which still holds up.
Yeah.
Really good movie from Michael Moore.
Columbine,
I was
Colorado.
gonna say that
I never saw
documentary.
that.
April 20th, 19.
It's
so
phenomenal.
It was like 2 weeks before we
Large,
got married.
you have so much homework in the need to watch department.
Really?
I know he really does. The queue is.
Did you
miles.
watch the World War II movie yet?
Oh, it was awesome.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
maybe we'll
Zone
save
of
that
interest.
for the end. We'll
Yeah,
get
yeah.
back to Zone of Interest.
Columbine is in Littleton.
Littleton.
Littleton,
So
yeah.
I said Little Rock, Arkansas.
Littleton.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
was
Yeah,
thinking of.
Littleton, Colorado.
Yeah.
And what year was Columbine?
99.
So 99. So then,
Oh.
April
if this,
20th, 99.
I thought it was 96.
So if I was then talking to this kid, when did I get fired from Citigroup? 2008.
2008. Yeah.
And so could I have spoke to this kid in 2007? Could he have gone to Columbine? It was right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because
Of
he would have
course he
been,
could've.
and then gone through college
He's
by
out
that
for
time.
could have been out
It
for
was
a
less than
while.
10
Yeah.
years
So that's it. I didn't want to do a disservice to the thing, but it was one of those things that was just fucking eerie.
Yeah.
You know, it's
He would
sort
have
of
been
like
26 or 27 when you spoke to him.
yeah, it's sort of like Mikey Pirro, your cousin, who's one of my favorite people in the world. He's a great kid, West Point graduate. I had gone to a Army game with him up in West Point. I don't know if it was lacrosse or football. And I had met a bunch of my friends there who were also West Point grads as well. So before I knew cons, I think.
Oh,
So
yeah,
we're
Mick
sitting
was
there.
little.
Yeah, we're sitting there in a row and with all these guys who are former West Point grads. Oh, when did you get out? I graduated in 93. Oh, when did you get out? I graduated. Whenever Mike graduated, that was the year that they took everybody, as soon as
2002.
they graduated, they took you overseas to go to war.
He was 2002, I believe.
Oh, yeah, something like
And everyone
that.
was like, ooh.
So when
they're
he
all
was like,
"Thank you
I
for
was
your service," that time.
class of 2002, all these guys who had also served our country knew that was the class that got pulled. So they're like, oh man, you were the, shout out, like thank you for your service from
Yeah.
guys who had also served. So it's not a 1-for-1 because I'm unable to do a chin up my whole life and I don't know what it's like to serve in the military, much less in a war or something. But I had that feeling when I was like, ooh, Columbine, somebody checked the dates. Oh, you were there? And he spoke about it. I was like, all right, let's get to talking about the fucking
Jeez,
Colorado
that must have
Buffalo.
been terrifying.
Well, it's weird how much these connect because Adolf Hitler's birthday, I believe,
April
420.
20th.
is April 20th.
Correct.
So that's what I meant by everyone kind of brings it back to Columbine because a lot of copycats, a lot of people are now
Definitely.
influenced by,
Yeah.
Right.
unfortunately, other mass shootings.
And they, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they called it their manifesto, right? Wasn't that
Yeah,
what
they had-
the
they were-
Klebold kid had?
They
Or-
had neo-Nazi stuff in their books
Yeah.
and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, they all do.
Yeah.
I think.
That's what Bowling for Columbine is about, though, is at that morning they went bowling. So that's
Oh, really?
the last thing they did before they drove over to the school.
Really?
You gotta watch it. I know
Yeah, you
some people
gotta watch
think
that.
Michael Moore is a bit of a whack job,
That's
but
his
it's
best
it's
one.
amazing.
I think he's a
I've
piece of
never
shit.
watched
Like,
it.
so that's
Yeah,
why I've never. I just always consider him kind of like a fat piece of shit.
Yeah.
That was
Um,
his second. He did like Roger and Me. I never saw that one. That was about like Detroit auto workers.
that was his like first one ever.
because he's from Flint.
Right.
Oh, is he?
So the whole
Really?
water thing. Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
know that. I
And
don't know
he-
much
and
about
he's
him.
A member. He's a lifetime member of the NRA. So like that was what spurred his interest in this whole thing. So it's
I
really
don't know why
interesting.
I have such a bad taste. I mean, other than the fact that he's
He does like the Fahrenheit 9/11 and
Yeah.
the
Right.
so he
He's
does
a
get
shock
he does
jock.
get very political for
okay.
sure.
There was
But
something that pissed me off about him at some point.
Bowling for Columbine, like even the politics he brings, you can get behind it because it's
Yeah.
kids. And
Of
you're
course.
like, all right, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
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 All right, yeah. So I will definitely watch it. So the thing is Ben had sent me this story about Luby's, right? And I just gave you what it was, and now I'm going to go back to Ben's story and complete his email. Back to Ben Carter's story about Luby's. One of the people that sadly was killed that day was a man named Al Gracia. Al Gracia. He was a big-time golfer, and he was eating lunch at Luby's with his wife and daughter when the shooter stormed inside. Al told his wife and daughter when the shooter turns his back, run for the back door, and they did just that as Al rushed the shooter, and he was shot and killed on approach. The daughter made it through the door to exit the building while Al's wife turned around to rush the side of her husband, who had just been shot, and the shooter went on to kill Al's wife as well, but the daughter was able to make the escape. So I don't know about this story. I'm going to continue on with Ben's DM. It sounds super morbid, but the reason I'm bringing this story up is because Al's daughter, Susanna Gracia Hupp, became one of the lead spokespersons for the freedom of concealed carry in the state of Texas. She was a main factor in getting the bill pushed through as she detailed the accounts of that fateful day. Susanna also spent 5 terms as a state representative for District 54 in Texas. I thought you would find this tidbit of information as it was huge for gun laws in Texas. She also wrote a book, From Luby's to Legislature, One Woman's Fight for Gun Control. That's the end of the DM from Ben Carter.
I love that because it's a woman going back at the shooter who needed women.
I love that DM, right? But you have to check on this stuff,
Sure.
obviously, right? Which I did. So reading Ben's letter about that day, I automatically envision Al and his wife taking their daughter to lunch, and that daughter maybe being 10 or 11. That's because I'm stupid. That's because I'm an idiot that has a 14-year-old daughter. So whenever I hear you taking your daughter to lunch, I automatically think you're going to fucking American Girl. That's not what Ben had written or anything like that. That's just me being an idiot. But Susie was 32 years old that day when she was having lunch with her
Oh, wow.
kid.
I
Wasn't
with her
picturing
parents.
that. Yeah, I
You
was
weren't
thinking
picturing that,
16.
right?
I was thinking 16.
You take
So
your
you're
kids
thinking
to
about
breakfast,
a
you
young
think,
girl that managed to escape while her parents are mowed down, who grew up to be a representative
That's what I
and
took
said,
it.
listen, we need to have concealed handguns because it could have been a possibility that somebody would have shot this son of a bitch before he killed 23 people. That's what I had in my mind. So that's not necessarily true. That's why I'm clearing this up. Ben wasn't being misleading or anything like that. I'm just ignorant. She was 32 years old that day. And the reason she was able to use her tragic story as a platform for concealed carry rights in Texas is because 32-year-old Susie later expressed regret about deciding to remove her gun from her purse and lock it in her glove compartment because she didn't want to get in trouble going into a restaurant in Texas because she knew that there was concealed laws. So she didn't have her gun on her that day because of the laws that she later on repealed. That's kind of fucking different, and that's kind of cool. But hold on one sec. During the actual shootings, Susie reached for her weapon and then realized, oh shit, it's 100 feet away in my car. Right?
Of course.
And I'm just going to nitpick the details here because I want this story to be out there correctly. I wouldn't have known about this story without Ben, so I'm not nitpicking Ben at all. Send me all this shit. She didn't escape through a door. Somebody else was escaping and got thrown into a window, broke the window with their shoulder. She escaped through a fucking broken window. So when she got out,
She's a stud.
thinking that her mom was going to be behind her, it's not like she could have just turned around and went through an open door again. She had to leap out a fucking window. And sure enough, her mom didn't. Her mother, and also her mom was shot dead at point blank range while cradling her dying husband in her arms. Holy shit, that's fucking tragic. So that's a perfect DM for me, Ben Carter. And whoever had told you the story about this, the follow-up to Luby's, is a perfect follow-up story for us. What do you guys think? Like, now that I cleared it up, that's a good twisted history story. Tragic and horrible, but what do you think, Febsy?
Yeah, when I envisioned it, I envisioned like a 16-year-old girl. And then she's an orphan, doesn't have kids. She's a grown woman, doesn't make it.
But then she went for her peace.
Yeah.
And it wasn't there.
Because she followed the rules.
Because she followed the rules. I think that's a much more...
I would have liked it if she was the one who shot him. I would have liked it if she got the gun, came back, and popped him, but...
I thought that was where that was going to... She went out in the parking lot.
But as opposed to saying, hey, listen, so I grabbed my pigtails and I ran out the door and I never saw my mommy and daddy again. Like, that would be tragic enough. But this girl's like, listen, I could have saved my mom, dad's, and 20-some-odd people's lives if I just would have been packing that day. Instead, it was in my fucking car.
The thing is...
Anyway, I like that story.
The dad, the way the dad behaved, it was like it was his... 10-year-old girl.
Yeah.
That's his girl. Like, that's his wife and that's his little girl. Like, it doesn't matter if she's 32, 23 or 12. Like, that's his little girl, and he was going to do what dads do.
Yeah. I feel like it doesn't change mentally. Like, you still are a dad and it's your job.
I agree.
In Indiana, whenever they accepted the carry license, there was like a shooting in the mall. And like the day the law got passed, someone pulled out their gun and like shot the mall shooter.
Really?
So it was kind of a.
Oh yeah, that was relatively the last few years.
Yeah, it was
right?
like 3 years ago, maybe.
That guy had like incredible aim. They said too.
Yeah.
He did.
That's him. You're a dead shot too.
Yeah, I'm a very good shot.
He was like across the food court.
I want to say he was like a military guy.
Yeah, I think we're thinking about the same one.
Yeah.
But he was just like.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
By the way, we're
like
crawling up
the way
on.
you do
Yeah, you like the sound effects?
We're crawling up on Memorial Day weekend. We're taping this on Thursday. But I'll be down in Charlotte this weekend for the NASCAR race.
Coke 600.
And I will tell you, if you guys want to feel American this weekend, tune into the Coke 600 around 6 o'clock on Sunday on Fox. Because I've told you before that, you can go to NASCAR and like place like Daytona and there'll be like 250,000 people there. They'll play the anthem and the only people who aren't standing for the anthem are those people who are too drunk to stand, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of refreshing, to be honest with you, without getting too jingoistic. But what they do for the Coke 600 is that every car on the frame of the car door, they always have the driver's name. So we'll say Chase Elliott, and then there'll be stickers next to the driver's name for how many races they won that year, because they're guaranteed in the playoffs. So William Byron has 3 stickers in back of his name and stuff like that. But for the Coke 600, because it's on Memorial Day, they put the name of a fallen soldier, and those soldiers' families are invited. If they do make it to the race and that driver happens to win, then the family comes in the winner's circle with them and stuff like that. The flyover is extra special. I mean, it's just very good. We're bringing the Zero Block 30 guys down there for a reason, right? They're probably the most noble thing that we do here, even though people think that saving dogs is. But so Kate, Chaps, and Cons will be down there with us, and Annie and Bridget are actually coming with us too. So and Spider. So it's going to be a good time if you feel like being...
Hell of a crew.
Yeah, if you feel like being USA this weekend. We decided to do this week's episode on horses just because it's easy. Like, we were talking about conspiracy theories, and I started to go down rabbit holes. Every one of them is... Like, you really have to get into this shit.
Yeah.
Like, you have to be versed. I know macrodosing likes their conspiracy theory. They've gotten away from it lately, particularly with Billy being gone.
I know. I had all this stuff, and you threw me a curveball.
I'd love to talk about adrenochrome.
Okay. I mean, your kung
I
fu.
don't know.
Yeah, your kung fu.
We're teasing a future episode.
Yeah,
at this
yeah.
point.
Your kung fu has
part
got to
one,
be
part
strong
two.
if you want to talk about
Yeah.
fucking conspiracy
Yeah.
theories.
We'll have to each pick one and then really do a deep dive on each one.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
might
I'd be
be better.
DTF with that, but
People say Billy's new podcast too is featuring some conspiracies. So
And
I
that's
haven't
his
listened
whole-
to
He
audio.
Audio
loves them.
crack.
Yeah, I haven't heard it yet.
Yeah, Billy Football has just started. So he had left macrodosing. Macrodosing is still a weekly show with Arian and PFT and that whole crew. Mad Dog.
Mad Dog,
and,
Big T.
She doesn't take a
Tennessee.
bad picture.
Yeah.
She does not take a bad
Wonton
picture.
Don shows up every now and again. I was on it last week explaining the GameStop stuff for them.
Yeah, we've joined them a couple times.
Yeah, we did a 9/11 episode, Annie and I.
Oh, I wanted to say. So I had put the kibosh on the horses episode last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, horse racing.
Because
Yeah.
my background, I used to work in live horse racing, so I'm here to monitor.
Yes.
I'm here to keep us in check.
I have that one still in the queue too. For
Yeah.
we didn't use that for this
Well, I
one.
assumed we would get to it because it's all
Yeah.
horses.
Like horse racing is a different.
Right.
We'll talk a little bit about horse racing obviously today, but horse racing is a whole episode in itself.
Yeah, we have a lot of
I
stuff on
mean,
that.
well, some of the biggest scandals in horse racing, I was reading about it last night. Some horse tested positive for, performance enhancing horse drugs. And the owner said, no, it's because I donated to Coretta Scott King. This is right after Martin Luther King was shot. Some racists found out about it, so they shot my horse in the ass the day of the race. Like, there's a lot of stuff.
Seedy underbelly. Is it seedy? Seedy
Yeah,
underbelly.
seedy underbelly.
It's remarkably
racing.
similar because we cover boxing.
Yes.
To boxing. There's a lot of similarities with the industries because who just popped Ryan Garcia? Just
Yes.
popped on PEDs.
Yes. His B sample will be back by the time this podcast comes out. But so they have the A samples and the B samples. So Ryan is insisting that the B sample is also tested. So we're going to find that out pretty soon. But anyway, so we're going to do horses today. And it's right. I had the conversation with John. I was like, John, we're going to do horses. He was like, huh? And I was like, no, we're not going to fuck with your legacy.
May I make a horse noise into the microphone?
Yeah, please. By the way,
All right, I'm happy.
how cool was the camel noise last week?
Yeah.
They're-
For those of you that saw on Barstool Boxing.
Yeah.
Or actually, it was on large your personal account.
Yeah, we went through this whole thing with DAZN doing a preview for the fight that was taken on that was being held in Saudi Arabia. So John, Annie, and I went down to the Cape May Zoo and rented a camel, Kamala Harris.
How
And
much? How much a camel cost you these days?
By the way, we were going to rent one in New York City, and it was like $2,000 an hour.
oh shit,
Yeah, it's $5,500 for two.
Yeah, it's crazy.
that's insane.
Yeah, crazy. So
But
we
you-
went down.
You
They're
weren't
trying to
allowed to
get
hold
that kid birthday party
Yeah.
racket. That's a racket.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
By the way, Cape May Zoo
My
brought
kid-
us down. They wouldn't let us on the camel or anything like that, but I can't tell you, zoos are depressing sometimes.
very.
I don't go to them that often. This place is more like they're kept like pets. It's a beautiful zoo.
Yeah, it was great.
Highly recommend it.
You can interact with almost every animal there. Like you
Yeah.
can touch the pigs, you can touch the capybara, you can get in with all the. I can't wait to go back.
They're
Yeah.
recently
Bears.
they just opened the Bronx Zoo, the Central Park Zoo, I believe, after being closed for a year or two because of weather or something like
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
Really?
I can't remember, but it's open again.
Pass.
Yeah, the Bronx Zoo is.
I'm not a
pretty
fan.
good.
I'm not a fan of zoos.
I haven't done the
make
Bronx.
me-
but the
they
Cape
make me
May Zoo was
sad.
good. And then
Yeah.
John and Annie and I had found a pretty good diner right outside of it.
Oh yeah,
I had a little bit of
Courthouse
scrapple.
Diner, was that what it was called?
Kate,
had a li-
yeah,
had a
right
little
down
bit-
on
Something like that.
Yeah, heading towards the center of town.
So, I mean, horses have played such an integral part of our history, particularly before the invention of the automobile, that they're everywhere. And I will tell you that idioms from horse culture have crept into our vernacular to the point where you don't even know you're saying something that's related to horses anymore. I unknowingly use them across the board on my everyday speech, including the term across the board, which I bet horses. I just hit the Derby and I hit the 11 race beforehand when I was in Vegas for the fights. And so I've bet certain things like that. Oh, the B sample came back positive for Ostarine. This is Annie giving me the thing. So the same thing that Ryan Garcia popped positive for Ostarine, and he requested the B sample be tested as well, and it just came back that that's positive for Ostarine also. I don't know what's going to happen to the kid. It's not a huge deal, and he seems like he's so fucking crazy it doesn't matter, but that's out there. But anyway, so like if you use something like across the board, which I use all the time.
You do?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
had
mean,
no
yeah.
idea that was horse. I would have assumed it was like chess. A
Yeah,
chess
maybe.
thing. You're talking about a board.
Hung
Yeah.
like-
Yeah,
horse.
yeah. So, but like across the board means when you bet on a horse to win, place, or show. So you're basically like you can do a $10 across the board bet, but you're only betting 3, 3, and 3 for all intents and purposes, as opposed to $10 to win, $10 to play. So you can bet across the board. Now it means a policy or situation that affects everything or everyone in a particular group. You hear it all the time in the business world, particularly in these bullshit things that we have to do for human resources, for sexual discrimination, all that stuff. Those things are a fucking waste of time. Holy shit.
Yep.
Yeah. 28 minutes the other day for one of them.
Oh, brother, 60. You
Yeah.
had to do 60. It was 60. They're like, this will take 5 minutes. It was just an hour.
Yeah. All about like sexual harassment and stuff like that. I get it.
My favorite was this. Did you do cyber awareness yet?
I started it.
They basically, they're like, if you fuck this up,
Yes.
it's your reputation.
Yep.
It's the company's reputation. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Let's just get some bigger firewalls.
Yeah. And then give us a video that nobody pays attention to, ask us what phishing is, and then you get to go home.
I
yeah. Fishing with a PH.
like be professional, but they're trying to make jokes in it, and they're just the worst jokes of all time. It's like, this
They're
is
awful.
Don't worry, we're gonna make harassment training fun. And
Yeah.
it's like just
But
give me the rules.
I can tell you, I've heard across the board within those multiple times. And then I don't want to beat a dead horse, but beating a dead horse, right? Like beating a dead horse dates back to the early days of horse racing when the jockeys would really whip their horses with those riding crops to make them run faster. In professional racing, they still use crops, don't they?
Yeah, they're not. They changed the material it's
Okay.
made of over the
So
years.
they're not as
It's
violent?
not a switch.
You have
what
like
his name
different
used.
weights too, depending on what you want to do. They have rules in Britain for how often you can do it. We don't quite have those rules yet here.
Okay.
But they do pay attention to it. You can get docked as a jockey if you overdo it.
But beating a dead horse, hey, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. It means it comes from it's a jockey term. When a jockey was so far behind in a race that he knew he wasn't going to win, place, or show, it doesn't matter if you come in 16th or 18th in a race. 50, if you're not in the first three, it doesn't fucking matter. Like NASCAR sometimes, hey, I had a top 20 finish. Nobody won money on you, but, still. So beating a dead horse, stop beating a dead horse, jockeys would lay off. They'd say, you know what, I'm going to stop whipping this son of a bitch because he's dead in this race.
You know what's
know what I
interesting
mean?
too is sometimes it's about like it's not a perfect analogy, but crate training. Like some people are against it, right?
Yeah.
With your dog because it's like you do some things with training with animals sometimes that is a little tough love.
Of course.
So sometimes the whipping, for lack of a better word, it teaches the horse to respect it, and you'll see jockeys that will actually just show the horse
Right.
the whip right in their eye. And they will go as if they were hit. So it's like you can get a horse to kind of not always have to get hit to get that reaction.
Absolutely. It's like with
which
one
I
of our
thought was
dogs.
interesting.
Remember
Yeah.
Chloe with the banana? You point a banana at her, she would cower. I have no idea what
Pavlov.
happened to her, but
Pavlov.
Pavlovian.
Yeah. Parents do it, right? You show your kid the.
Oh, 100%. You show the wooden spoon for my mom. Show this wooden spoon. When she broke it over my brother's shoulder, it was like, like she broke Excalibur.
Yeah.
Oh, wait till dad gets home. It's fucking wooden spoon. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm chomping at the bit to give you more examples. That's saying
What?
champing or chomping at the bit. It's actually spelled champing at the bit, even though they're accepting now chomping at the bit. It originating with horse racing it refers to the bridle, right? Which has a bit that fits into the gums of a horse's mouth. When the horse becomes excited or nervous, it tends to chew on that bit. So the saying has evolved into what's now interpreted as meaning eager or ready to go. I'm chomping at the bit.
By the way, I think it's called a crop. They actually call it
Crop.
instead of
Yeah,
a whip.
riding
A
crop.
wire. Yeah, I
Yeah,
gotta
yeah.
brush up on my. horse
Absolutely. So this is stuff that I think we use all the time. Beat a dead horse. Across the board. I'm
you didn't
chomping
even
at the
notice I
bit to
looked
get
at you
to.
when I said hung like a horse.
Yeah. Also from horse racing, we get home stretch. We're in the home stretch. We get the term front runner, which you're going to hear a lot in an election year. We get the term dark horse, which we hear a lot in the election year.
And
We'll
NASCAR.
hear win by a nose, which we hear a lot in an election year. Down to the wire. It was from the early days of horse racing when they actually had a wire above the finish line so judges could determine the winner better. Like it was, because obviously there's no line in the dirt. So they had down to the wire.
Yeah,
Go
photo
ahead.
finish I'll throw in there just because
Photo
that's
finish.
still used in horse racing.
Yeah.
And then you'll just use
Yeah.
it for any close call.
You know what, John? I think that we have a nice give and take. Give and take is a horse, because that's from balancing out a horse by putting weights in the saddle when you're handicapping horse, and that's the give and take. That's where it comes from.
Yeah,
in
they'll
election,
put, if
go
once
ahead.
they weigh the horses or the jockeys, right, they try and get them all to be the same, like 115 or 120 or whatever
Yeah.
it
Right,
is.
right.
And if you're underweight, they'll put weights in your saddle
And that's a give and take.
to equal it out.
Yeah.
That's where it started. And then, which I didn't know. Running mate, the same way a stable would enter a second horse in the same race as a faster horse so it could set the pace. let's start from scratch here. Starting from scratch, in the old days before electronic starting gates, officials would scratch a line in the dirt to indicate the starting point. When the race began, all the entries had to have their hooves at or behind that scratch line. Starting from scratch. Hold your horses goes way back to the time of chariot races. In Homer's The Iliad, Antilochus is told, hold your horses, when he was driving a chariot too fast. Get off your fucking high horse. How often do I say that to you, Annie? Right? Originated from when medieval soldiers, landowners, and political leaders were known to ride larger and more expensive horses to emphasize their power and superiority. And then there's another saying that I use quite often, especially with the kid, is straight from the horse's mouth. And that also came from the world of horse trading, where you would examine a horse's teeth to help determine its age and health in case the information given by the seller was false. It's like Carfax. You look at a horse's mouth and you say, no, this thing, because you can tell a horse's age by the size of its teeth, from what I understand, or how much it recedes.
Like tree rings.
Yeah, it's like tree rings. So that's where straight from the horse's mouth comes from. And in the same way, if you were given a horse back in olden times as a gift, and you then right away attempted to look in the horse's mouth to see how good or bad the gift is, that would be insulting to the person who gave it to you.
Absolutely.
And therefore never looked a gift horse in the mouth.
That makes sense.
It makes sense.
It has
now,
never
doesn't
made
it?
sense to me.
Yeah, so straight from the horse's mouth, never look a gift horse in the mouth. This was all revelatory to me when we were kind of going through it. Why the fuck is it called a Charlie horse? And the reason it's called a Charlie horse is because back in the 1880s, baseball players named their painful leg cramps after a lame horse named Charlie that used to help the groundskeepers at the old Comiskey or wherever the hell the White Sox played back in the 1880s. I'm assuming it's Comiskey, but it's probably not. So old lame Charlie used to hop around. So all of a sudden you pull a hammy and then you have a Charlie horse. Is that stupid?
That's so specific.
Yeah, it's
It
very
really is,
specific.
yeah.
Like I thought a Charlie horse would be like a bum horse or something that everyone knew about. That's such a it's the White Sox grounds crew's horse.
Right.
Charlie.
Seems a little unfair to Charlie.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
I got points taken off a quiz once because I spelt it wrong.
Oh,
'Cause
Charlie.
I have two parents from Brooklyn, so I wrote it Cholly.
Oh, Charlie.
Like it's like one of those things that like you that just sticks with you.
Might as well say, shout out Little Charlie's in the financial district. They used to hit us up with some lunches. Oof, it was
Place was
fantastic.
great.
So Charlie horse, what I did, getting a leg up. I always tell my sons in life, try to get a leg up and try to get a cock in. What's up? But getting a leg up.
I'm interrupting. Sorry.
Go.
Lakefront Park is where the White Sox played in
1880.
1880.
Thank you. Somebody would have came out.
They needed to know that.
That's some good history, Viv.
It is. Thank you. I appreciate that. Getting a leg up, it alludes to putting a foot in a stirrup to be able to get your leg up and over the horse. Even riding shotgun to a degree, and I think we've talked about this before, but back in the stagecoach days, the driver of the stagecoach who was holding the reins would often have somebody next to him with a shotgun to ward off any would-be robbers or those nasty Native Americans. That's where carriage gun came, like a shorter shotgun, usually that has the break in it, is sometimes called a carriage gun because of that. That's where they get riding shotgun. And go ahead, John.
When I do that, you can finish your sentence. I won't.
Go ahead. No.
Was that a shot at me for not letting him finish his sentence?
No,
for
no,
Lakefront Park?
I'm so used to it.
I gave you a big point, like I wanted to jump in right away, but it made me think of, because some people don't realize this, why you have to shoot a horse. But
I'm going to talk about
they're
that.
very top heavy.
I got to be honest. I've always wondered.
I had a coworker that said they're like hot dogs on
toothpicks.
Toothpicks,
Yeah.
Hot dogs on toothpicks.
It's true.
Yeah, and extremely muscular and extremely horses are fucked up. Like that's why I think this is a
thoroughbreds mostly. Is what I'm talking about.
This is a very conversational podcast because horses, even though they're very functional and have been for centuries, they shouldn't be alive.
They
right?
really,
You know what I mean?
really
Like,
should
they
not.
shouldn't be alive.
Or they should look differently.
Yeah, but I'm going to talk
Evolution.
about them being put down.
Evolutionary miracle in a way.
Yeah. And like physically, biologically, they make no sense.
Yeah, and really, some draft horses and Clydesdales have much bigger legs to support, but thoroughbreds in particular do not.
Right.
That's what I was thinking.
I'm a Clydesdale. Vibs is a stallion. Wouldn't you say?
Ooh.
I like that.
Sure.
John, you're a Palomino.
Arabian horse.
Arabian horse. By the way, they have a different number of bones than every other horse in the world.
Or
Arabian.
actually, I like how a little cut in here. If you watch Gladiator, right? He's got the Italian horses
Yes.
on his.
No, the Spaniard.
Armor.
Oh, yeah.
Spaniard.
Spaniard,
yeah.
Spanish
Annie,
horses.
you're
Don't say I'm the Pinto.
no, you're like My Little Pony. People won't have sex with that thing. All right, so the last thing I'm going to mention as far as horse
I'm gonna
idioms,
get shit
and
for
this
that.
is one that I hear a lot. I hear like, hey, man, like whenever I use a public restroom or if I have to shower when I'm at a golf tournament or something, I hear, holy shit, Large, you're hung like a horse. And here's why they say that. But first, Factor meals. Factor meals on warmer, sunnier days, they're calling. Fuel up with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-crafted meals like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have a time to enjoy nutritious and great tasting meals. Maybe today you kickstart a new healthy routine. What are you waiting for? 35 different choices and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. You'll always have new flavors to explore so you can crush your wellness goals this year, this May, with dietitian approved meals and ingredients that you can trust. Make your day delicious from breakfast to dessert. Stay fueled with easy, nutritious options and enjoy an effortless support for your lifestyle. Head to factormeals.com/twisted50 and use code TWISTED50 to get half a hundred off your first box plus 20% off your next month. I'll say that again. Head to factormeals.com/twisted50, twisted50, and use twisted50 as the code to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. Okay? And if this thing here is, we've said this before, you have a kid in college and you're sick of him going to Chipotle 3 times a week or something like that, just send this to him, right? And he pops it in. You have parents who are getting a little bit older and, you know, maybe single mom, you don't want to have to cook for 4 or 5 people. Just send this to him. And I don't know. It's the deal that they give us is second to none. The food is very good. I think it's something you should try. Factormeals.com/twisted50 and use code twisted50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. That was a tough one to get out.
was tough
Subscription.
to watch.
I think I bit the inside of my cheek. Thank you, Factor.
Do me a
What's
favor,
up?
go like this. Thank you.
Yeah.
I realized I said before this that they shoot horses, but they don't shoot them anymore. They give them the needle. They give them an injection on the track if they break down now, so they don't shoot them.
Breakfast at
They're
Belmont.
still getting
I
technically
misspoke.
getting shot. with
Breakfast at
something.
Belmont 40 years ago, 45 years ago, when I used to go, they used to bring out like a curtain.
Yeah.
And
They
then
still
you'd
do
hear,
that.
I remember
yeah.
that.
They used to bring out a curtain and all here and you bang! Not at all.
That's not true.
I think they might have had the bolt gun from No Country from Old Men
I
or
was,
something.
when
That's
you said
for cows, right?
Yeah, when you said they shoot them, like what else do they do? The bolt gun is all I could
Yeah.
picture.
That's what I thought,
guess a
too.
lethal injection.
Well, they do consider the bolt gun humanitarian from.
I know that's how
right?
they get the cows.
Right. Yeah.
They say it's because, well, one of the things I read was because there's no scent on it. Like
On the bolt gun?
on the bolt gun, it doesn't have the gunpowder smell. So the
Right.
horse and the cattle don't,
What a great
don't
movie
sense
that
fear
is.
That makes
No Country for
because
Old
they're
Men.
heightened
Oh,
sense.
kind of like seeing the crop a little bit.
Because horses, they can't breathe through their mouths. They can only breathe through their
Oh,
nose.
I don't
I'm gonna
believe
get
that.
to
Do
that.
it. I
still
I'm
don't
going to get
believe
to
that.
it all. But let's talk about the most important part of this podcast. When people say to me, perhaps you're hung like a horse, Large. What does that mean? The average human penis is anywhere from 4 to 7 inches long. But trust me, 4 inches is plenty, correct?
It's huge.
Oh, yeah, 4 inches is huge. The average
Enormous.
stallion's penis is anywhere from 18 to 24 inches
Tell
long.
'em.
That's 2
I'm
feet
not going to
of
lie to
dick.
you. This part of this was difficult for
Yeah.
me.
So it's 2 feet of dick.
Wait.
The average blue whale's penis, the average blue whale's penis is 10 feet long, which is the longest penis in the animal world. And it's not that impressive when you consider that a female blue whale, her vagina is 12 feet deep. So he's still beating the sides with that thing. He's never making it to the bottom. But still, it's a 10-foot dick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I made that up. But stallions have anywhere from 18 to 24 inches that they're packing. The average volume of male ejaculate is anywhere from a half to a full teaspoon. Sometimes you're shooting ropes that you think could fill up a tablespoon or so, but on average, you know, when you factor in age and physical well-being, you shoot a load that's probably between a half and a full teaspoon. Horses, the average volume of a breeding stallion's ejaculate is around 14 ounces. That's nearly 2 cups. That's a pint.
Imagine 2 of these coming at you.
Yeah. That's almost an even pint of horse cum. It's crazy.
My mind is blown.
Being
Yes.
hung like a horse is probably one of the nicest things that you could say to somebody, because you're insinuating that they have a 2-foot cock that shoots a pint of cum, which would be nice. A nice little change of pace.
Piss like a racehorse. That's another thing.
Piss like a racehorse is one too.
When we were in we were at horse camp. When I went to horse camp for three
back
summers.
it up.
You got to
Horse
show. I
camp?
love that. By the
told
way,
you. I've told you this, right?
can we acknowledge his shirt?
Yeah, I wore
How
my
beautiful it is.
horse
I love
shirt.
it.
I wish I could say it was just for the horse episode. I think I've worn this for every episode, pretty much.
Yeah, you've seen-
it's
seen-
too much. But no, I went to horse camp for like 3 summers, and when they piss, it's just like someone's taking the nozzle at the gas station and just letting it go.
Right.
It's so much piss. And when you're 11 years old, you think it's the funniest thing ever.
Unless you're behind it.
It has some
True.
modern. I don't know if you have this in your notes, but there's actually some modern reasoning behind that too.
Why is that?
Well, because of LASIK. I don't know if that's probably it wasn't in your notes. So
No.
there's something called LASIK.
That probably wasn't in your notes, Large.
It probably wasn't in your notes.
LASIK, like the surgery I had done in my
No,
eyes?
so it's a drug called LASIK, which actually they give to horses to prevent pulmonary. It's called exercise-induced pulmonary hemorrhaging.
Okay.
Which means like when they exercise, their lungs bleed.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave them this drug to help with that, and it's actually a performance enhancer.
Okay.
Because it makes you piss a lot, which lowers your weight.
Right.
So it also does some other things. There's some theories around it. There's a lot of controversy around it. So they actually give it to every horse, regardless of whether you need pulmonary.
Oh, really?
Help.
Okay.
So it's a fair. It's a
So
fair
that it's a
playing
fair
field.
advantage. Yes.
Yeah.
Now there's more to it than that, but that's like the gist.
I didn't see that. That's wild.
So that's like piss like a racehorse really does still have like a lot going
Yeah.
on behind it.
Oh,
Yeah.
they piss. They piss a lot.
Whenever I talk about things like hung like a horse or big dicks, I would reference some of history's biggest penises. And the ones that jump to mind for me are Liam Neeson, James Woods, Milton Berle, and Joe DiMaggio. One person wrote me once, I told you guys, that he's like, I hate that in every episode you mention Joe DiMaggio's dick. Since then, I've been trying to make sure I mention in every episode because of that, because I just kind of like it.
James, did you mention James Woods? I think he's up there.
James
too.
Woods, yeah. But I'm going to go and give some other names that people might know a little bit better. I'm going to call them D-list celebrities because they have big dicks. Okay. And they're all new to this list that I haven't spoke to before. One of them, by the way, is John Mayer. John Mayer's got a huge
Really?
cock.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah, that's what everyone
Would
says.
you have known that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good.
You knew that before I mentioned
Oh
it.
yeah. I think you texted me about it.
I did.
And I was like, yeah, brother, that's common knowledge.
Okay, I didn't know.
Really?
Go
Well,
ahead.
you know, I mean, he's such a ladies' man, right? That there's a theory out there that he started to have sex with men because he got bored.
Really?
I've
Yeah.
heard that about Elton John.
Yeah. And well, because we talked about the '80s band guys too that did this. Yeah. So this is
It became kind of androgynous, like
Yeah.
after a while. The hair metal guys, you mean, right? Like
Yeah.
those guys? Yeah.
Yeah.
Any
No,
Portland
Mick Jagger and whatnot has like.
Oh, Jagger and Bowie.
Yeah. Same
absolutely.
idea.
Yeah,
that
some
you
degree
have
of
sex with so
androgyny.
many women that you get bored and then you just start flipping into that. I have nothing to support this.
And
though.
Diddy.
Did he?
Yeah.
Did he? Yeah.
Did he?
Or did
Didn't
he?
he? Did
Not.
he?
So I'm going to give you some new D-list celebs. John Hamm is packing a heater. He's never
I
shown
love
it,
him.
but they keep showing pictures of him.
The
And he-
Hamaconda.
Yeah, he said he doesn't like the fact that it's giving people are giving it so much attention.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
he's-
hate
Hot
people
and
talking
meaty.
about my massive penis.
yeah, but he's still
look at
wearing
me.
loose gray
Yeah.
sweatpants everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, wearing like no underwear underneath.
You
Like,
think
come
he
on,
picked his
John.
own last name?
Hamaconda.
No, hot and meaty.
Oh, hot and meaty, yeah. Charlize Theron. I had met Charlize Theron. I told the story on this podcast once or
Packing?
twice. Huh?
She's packing.
No, but she's stunning. Second most beautiful woman I've ever met. First one's next to me, right? But Charlize Theron, I'd seen her coming out of like the Peninsula Hotel at like 5:30 in the morning, and she was absolutely stunning. This was maybe 2007. Charlize Theron said about her co-star Michael Fassbender. She'd seen his wrench on the set of Prometheus and described it as a revelation. That's a quote. And she said, "I'm available to work with it anytime." Charlize
Wow.
Theron. She's never banged Michael Fassbender. I believe she was married, maybe not. I don't give a fuck. But Michael Fassbender is also packing a heater.
She saw
Was he
it. She was-
Magneto?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, young
Yeah.
Magneto. Yeah. Ariana Grande had tweeted about Pete Davidson being over 10 inches. That explains a lot. I think a lot of people know that. Victoria Beckham once bragged that David Beckham had a huge one. That's a quote. And then saying in an interview, here's another quote. "It's like a tractor's exhaust pipe."
I don't love. I mean,
that's
great,
not a great
great
analogy.
comparison.
Can't
I
believe
think it is. Like,
Do you?
I mean, it's kind of a
Exhaust
wild one.
pipe? Yeah.
I don't know.
Please tell people I'm an exhaust pipe.
I think I'd come up with a bunch of better things than that.
Yeah.
But Victoria Beckham had the when she was like, yeah, growing up we were middle class. And then David Beckham comes in. He's like, "What did your dad drive you to school in?" And it was like, "Oh, a Rolls Royce or whatever."
Really?
It's like, yeah, you're not middle class if you're driving around in a Rolls Royce. So I don't know. I don't believe her analogies or her interpretation of anything.
So you're questioning the validity of Posh Spice.
Yes, I am. But if you're gonna say I'm a tractor exhaust pipe, like go ahead and say that. That's fine.
That's from the Beckham documentary, which is really
right.
Good. Very
was
good.
it?
You should see that.
You know,
Put it on the list.
There's a porn star. Her name is Karina Taylor. And she fucked Jared Leto back in 2002 and said later, "I've been a porn actress for many years, and Jared was the biggest I ever had to work with. There's definitely a second career available for him if he ever runs out of mainstream work." And then the late transgender actress Alexis Arquette, who's related to Rosanna and David and all that stuff, once remarked on Leto's large penis, saying, "It's not only massive, it's like a Praetorian Guard's helmet," which is that one that has the coxcomb, right? And the thing.
See,
like
now
Praetorian.
that's a description.
That's better than tractor
That's better
pipe.
than a tractor pipe. A rusty chipping apart thing.
Yeah. Back to Karina Taylor.
Yeah.
They had her as adult film star. Like there was something, I changed it to porn star, and I said maybe I should back out of that because I don't know if she was ever officially in porn. Mm-hmm. And then when I read her biography, it seems that after the birth of her daughter in 2008, she left porn to do only mainstream work. But before that, full-born porn. Gag on This, Deep in Cream Part 5, Big Black Beef Stretches Little Pink Meat, Cum Dripper 6, Throat Bangers 3, Dripping Wet Sex Part 8, and The Blowjob Adventures of Dr. Fellatio.
That she just wants to ignore. We're just going to pretend that didn't
takes
happen.
away. Yeah, so she's a porn star.
Yeah.
Back to the D list. Dame Judi Dench.
Oh, I love her.
So do I. I don't think anyone ever is like, oh, I hate that old bitch. I like Dame Judi. What did I just call her? I called her Jame Judi Dench. Dame Judi Dench. She told the Daily Star that she caught sight of Daniel Craig's penis while they were on the set of their James Bond movie, and she said it was more than 007 inches. Nice. Here's her absolute quote. "It was an absolute monster," the 8-time Oscar nominee stated, before quickly adding, "Maybe I shouldn't have said that. How uncouth of me." But I think that's good for Daniel. Yeah. So it's good. And finally, Rachel Bilson. All these guys are hot. Jared Leto is very good looking. Yeah. Daniel Craig is very good looking.
Absolutely.
John Mayer is very good. Like I almost don't want them to have big cocks. Like I resent them for it. This last one I don't. I think Bill Hader is very, very funny.
Bill Hader, yeah.
I think Barry, Saturday Night Live. Well, extremely talented, no? Or am I crazy?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it's kind of like Pete Davidson, where it's like he's not. I don't think Pete Davidson's that attractive.
Oh, no, not at all. But Rachel Bilson, who I think was in the OC, once said what she missed most about her former boyfriend Bill Hader was his big giant dick. Good for good for Bill Hader. Yeah. So that's the new D list. So you can add that to Milton and Joe DiMaggio.
I've got to come up with all these creative ways to, compliment you.
Yeah, please.
I'm just gonna laugh if I learn that Large made up all these quotes later. And
No, these are all 100% true. Thank you for that, John. History's most famous horses. Let's look back in history and see who are the biggest. I think Incitatus might be one of the more famous horses from history because it was the horse that was owned by Caligula, the Third Roman Empire, the great-grandson of Augustus. We spoke about him. His favorite horse, Incitatus, was had its own miniature palace, and he made this horse his consul. He didn't make him a senator. Caligula died before the horse was made a senator, but he was still made his consul, the Republic's highest magistrate. Incitatus had 18 servants for himself. He walked in a harness decorated with special jewels. He dressed only in purple, the color of royalty, and was fed oats mixed with gold flake. Those oats were served in a gold and ivory manger. Incitatus was the fucking horse, right?
It was the Miss Peaches of its time.
That's right.
Oh, my God. That's perfect. Scholars suggest that the treatment of Incitatus by Caligula was an elaborate prank intended to ridicule and provoke the Senate, rather than a sign of Caligula's insanity, or perhaps it was a form of satire with the implication that a horse could perform a senator's duties. But don't think that Caligula wasn't insane. I won't go into all of his exploits, but he is the guy that used to roll around in piles of money, used to dress in women's clothing, which we don't judge here, and he used to sleep with his 3 sisters, which we definitely do judge here. And by the way, Caligula's horse, which I had to Google, is also the name of a very popular progressive metal band from Australia. I listened to some of it, and it winds up I do not enjoy progressive metal. Yeah, so, I mean, if it's your thing, God bless you, and I wish nothing but health and happiness to Caligula's horse.
Is it like the easy listening version of metal? Like, is it like toned down or what?
Is it like Toto?
No, and actually a couple of the bands on there I'm familiar with, and they're okay, but otherwise, it's like, when prog rock came out, like people kind of resented Rush as opposed to like straightforward rock and roll or like early Peter Gabriel, that type of stuff. This has a little bit of that feel. And
I'm surprised you don't like it.
Yeah, hit Caligula's horse, and you let me know how you feel about him. So that was Incitatus is how I'm pronouncing it. Pronounce it however the fuck you want. Then we're going on to Bucephalus. He was the famed steed of Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was a stud. We still haven't done an episode on him, but it's got to happen. As legend has it, Alexander broke this wild horse when no one else dared go near him, and not by force. They were at like some sort of horse auction. They bring out this beautiful horse, Bucephalus. Nobody can ride this thing. Alexander the Great was young at the time, and his dad said, I'll buy you that horse if you could break it. And Alexander went over there and said, I'll do it. Turned the horse away from the sun and then mounted it and was able to ride away. The whole time, the horse was afraid of its shadow. So that's how he had gotten to have the horse. Genius. And then they went on to be the best of friends. They traveled over 20,000 miles together through India and whatnot as Alexander was laying waste to everything. So this was a real deal war horse. At one point, he was kidnapped while Alexander was away on an excursion, and upon returning and learning of the theft, Alexander the Great promised to fell every tree, lay the countryside to waste, and slaughter every inhabitant in the region in which the horse was kidnapped. The horse was soon returned along with the plea for mercy. That's pretty good. You steal my fucking car, and I'm going to burn your family to the ground. The same thing with Bucephalus.
That's like the Sacagawea, Lewis and Clark version of whenever his horse or his dog gets stolen off the boat, and then he goes out and hunting for him.
Yeah.
Only that's the horse.
Bucephalus died.
Came out eventually.
And while in mourning, Alexander founded a city in his beloved horse's memory and named it Bucephala. So he named a city that he conquered after his horse. And it's also interesting that Alexander built another city after his favorite dog, Peritas. So it's not something that he didn't do often. I only mention this horse from history because he's got a great name, Bill the Bastard. He was an Australian war horse. He was called Bill the Bastard because, like Bucephalus, no man could mount him and ride him. So during World War I, instead of having him as somebody that the cavalry could be on, Bill the Bastard was put to work as a pack horse at Gallipoli. And look up, all the battles that had happened in and around Gallipoli in World War I, and you'll see that it was an active war zone, right?
Did you ever see the movie War Horse?
Yes.
Kind of, there's like piles of like dead horses because they're just working him to death to move around like the machinery or whatever.
Well, they brought this horse in from Australia, and when they imported horses to the continent, to Europe, for World War I, they couldn't afford to send them back. So a lot of them after the war were put down. Like there are very few war horses that had survived, honestly.
I thought you were going to say they just let them run free.
Oh, yeah,
like,
become like pets and whatnot. Yeah. So at some point, Bill the Bastard was shot in the ass. And one of the people that helped nurse him back to health was Major Michael Shanahan. And as a result, they formed a bond, and Bill the Bastard would let this guy, Michael Shanahan, this major, ride him. Like it was the only one. And so Michael Shanahan rode him into battle many times, including the Battle of Romani in 1916, where Bill and Major Michael made an astonishing and little-known rescue, galloping towards advancing Turkish soldiers to save 4 Tasmanian troopers who had their horses shot out from under them. So that's where this ornery horse, who wouldn't let anybody on top of him, goes into an active war zone with bullets whizzing by his head, and him and this guy, Michael Shanahan, took 4 injured fucking soldiers, and they carried 5 of them together on the horse's back a couple of miles out of the suck. So much so that they put up a statue to commemorate it. It's a pretty cool fucking statue.
Yeah.
You actually can't see the fifth guy. There was 3 horses on his back with 2 more hanging off the stirrups. So that was Bill the Bastard. Then this one is Staff Sergeant Reckless. Again, these horses from history, Incitatus, Bucephalus, Bill the Bastard, Staff Sergeant Reckless, they're all good, right? This isn't,
They're heroes.
Yeah, Boom Boom the Horsey. A modern-day war horse and perhaps the most
Mr.
decorated
Ed.
horse, in U.S. military history. This young mare became part of the U.S. Marine Corps in 1952 when Lieutenant Eric Peterson, I want you guys to pay attention to this, they're in Korea, and he purchases this horse from a young Korean man. And this horse, she became a pack horse carrying ammunition for recoilless rifles. And sometimes recoilless rifles, which is tough to say, are called reckless rifles, which is easier to say. And that's where Sergeant Reckless, the horse, got her name. Okay? These rifles were 100 pounds, 6 feet long. So this horse would carry the rifles and all the ammunition during the Korean War. The highlight of Sergeant Reckless's 9-month military career came in 1953 during the Battle for Outpost Vegas, when in a single day, Sergeant Reckless made 51 trips from the ammunition supply point to the firing sites. 95% of the time, the horse did it by herself, went back and forth by herself. She carried over 9,000 pounds. 9,000 pounds is almost 5 tons of ammunition that day, walking over 35 miles through open rice paddies and up steep mountains with enemy fire coming in at a rate of 500 rounds a minute. And on her return trips to the ammo department, or the ammo depot rather, she would carry wounded soldiers down the mountain to safety, unload them, get reloaded with bullets, and then she'd go back up to the troops. It's a hell of a fucking day.
She was dedicated.
Yeah, for Sergeant Reckless. She was also the first horse in the Marine Corps to have participated in an amphibious landing. Since the base that she lived in Korea didn't have any barn or anything like that, she survived on a diet of scrambled eggs, buttered toast, bacon, beer, Coca-Cola, and coffee. And without a barn, she slept in a tent with soldiers.
She probably joked around with them too. They had
Yeah.
a very funny personality.
Absolutely.
They do.
Yeah.
Horses do.
But despite her diet and the many bullets whizzing around her, the horse survived the war, was brought back to the United States in 1954, where she was cared for by the 5th Marines. She was promoted to Staff Sergeant in 59, retired with full military honors, and in 1960 was the recipient of 2 Purple Hearts, the Good Conduct Medal, the Presidential Unit Citation, the National Defense Service Medal, Korean Service Medal, the United Nations Service Medal, and the Republic of Korea Presidential Unit Citation. Sergeant Reckless was a fucking stud. And I couldn't get away from it like we do some fact checking. Here's a little fact that I found out also. I mentioned that somebody bought her in Korea from like some kid. The guy who bought Reckless, paid $250 for her cash in 1952, which is like $3,000 today. And the reason that he bought her from this Korean stable boy at the Seoul racetrack is the stable boy needed the money to buy an artificial leg for his sister. That's kind of cool. I buy a fucking
Feel-good
leg for my
story.
sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. So got her from a racetrack. Next horse that I'm going to highlight from history is one that PMT, pardon my take, had talked about last week, and that's Secretariat.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first time that I
deal.
did it. Did you see any of that shit?
I saw PFT talking about it.
Yeah, I
but
think Dan and PFT.
He said he wanted to exhume the body and test it for steroids.
Yeah.
Is there controversy in the horse world about
Yeah.
Secretariat?
Oh, yeah.
Well, they brought Randy Moss
Randy
on,
Moss.
who's one of the top analysts. He also seems to be a lot friendlier with PMT now. Not that he wasn't before, but I think he went on like 2 or 3 times this year. So, yeah, take it away. But
So Randy Moss looks like shit. He doesn't look like the guy who caught 23 touchdowns in the season.
The blog was obviously in jest, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so Randy Moss had come on. Obviously, as John had said, he's like a horse expert. And he had said that particularly with
he's
some
like
of the
the
problems.
Joe Buck, if you will,
Yeah,
of horse
I think that's
racing.
fair to say. There's evidence, overwhelming evidence that Secretariat may have been on some sort of performing-enhancing drug, but he made sure he put the caveat in that if Secretariat was, every horse that was racing back
To
then
John's
was
point,
also.
same thing with it's to your point what you were saying before about the LASIK.
Right. Well, it's like
You give it to one, you give it to all of
if
them.
everybody's on the same playing field, then
Right.
it's a little
It's like
different.
the steroid era in baseball. Everybody was
Right.
juiced up.
Right.
allegedly.
Yeah, and I think he made that point very clear. Like Randy Moss wasn't trying to. It's just so funny to say that name. I was not trying to sully the reputation of this, which I'm going to tell you. This horse, Triple Crown winner, widely considered to be the greatest racehorse of all time, won the Belmont Stakes by 31 lengths. I mean, it's never been matched. I think he set the records in all 3 jewels of the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
So this is Gretzky. This is Jordan, right? Like there is no comparison to the. Well, everyone compares everybody to Gretzky. To Jordan. This is the horse. So to have the guys at Pardon My Take come in there and say that, it made a couple of headlines. Which is good for them. I mean, who gives a shit? But this horse, I think it's more impressive that the owner of the horse was Penny Chenery, and the way that she got Secretariat was she flipped a coin. There was another stable owner named Ogden Phipps, and they decided to flip a coin to decide who would get this newborn horse. And the person who lost the coin toss would get that sire's next kid. So they flipped a coin. Ogden Phipps actually won. So he got this horse that was the sire Bold Ruler, and the mare was Hasty Matilda. That's what they were flipping the coin for. So Penny, who lost, got the second foal from Bold Ruler with a different mare, a mare called Something Royal. So Phipps won the coin toss, but Chenery won in the end when Something Royal gave birth to a red chestnut colt with 3 distinctive white socks on his legs, and it was Secretariat, the best racing horse that ever lived.
Was the one that didn't have the white socks the one that was the ultimate demise of her?
No, that was not.
She had she had the degenerative
Yes,
hoof, right?
yeah. During the Triple Crown run,
That'd be something, though.
Secretariat was on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Time, and Newsweek in the same week,
How cute.
which not a lot of humans have done. And she was Secretariat to he was certainly the first horse to do that. Right? Secretariat is a male horse.
I always thought it was a girl.
I'm just thinking about how
Secretariat's a male horse, right? Am I out of my fucking mind?
No, you're right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He was the first horse to be put on a U.S. stamp. People don't know. Secretariat lost his first race. Lost his first professional race, which is kind of cool to think about. What a piece of shit that went on. The average life expectancy of a thoroughbred is 30 years, but Secretariat was put down at only 19 after catching an incurable hoof condition. His record off the track was not as successful as it had been on. Put out to stud late in 73, he sired nearly 600 foals, including one horse that sold for $1 million at auction, but nearly all of his male offspring failed miserably at the racetrack.
Aw.
His grandsires did better, but the direct sires from Secretariat didn't, and that was one of the points that Randy Moss made. That if you use performing-enhancing drugs, it affects your ability to create
the sperm.
right? Viable offspring.
Is that,
I think you see the same thing with people, though, sometimes.
Yeah.
Like the sons
Definitely.
and daughters. Sometimes it skips a generation.
Michael
Well,
Jordan.
they always say
Yeah.
that it makes
Yeah.
you. They used to always say when we were kids, well, not me, but the guys, don't do steroids. It makes you sterile. That was one of the
Right.
things that
shrinks your balls.
Yeah.
shrinks your balls. Yep.
I'm going to allude to one thing, too. I'm not going to
Please.
quite get it right, but you mentioned Ogden Phipps.
Yes.
If you want to go down a big rabbit hole.
I do.
That's a big one because his father was Ogden Carnegie Phipps. And
And he's part of the Carnegie family.
well,
Really?
I'm going to get that wrong. So
Okay.
They might be cousins or related
Yeah.
somehow, but yeah, it goes back to the Carnegies, that whole line. And then those names, Ogden Phipps and Stuart Jan, these are still names in horse racing, like today, that are a part of these big organizations. So it's almost the same thing as horses with the people of this.
So do you say that he's sort of like a Mara or
Yeah,
a
like
Rooney, right, from the
Correct.
Giants?
That's a
in
great way to
Pittsburgh?
view it.
Yeah.
We had interviewed Denny Phipps, who was his great grandson
Okay.
at the time and won the 2013 Derby. So it all connects.
Yeah, very incestuous.
Yes.
Let's talk about horse theft because, like I had said, before the invention of the automobile, horses were absolutely vital to the survival of the human species. I don't think I'm using any kind of superlatives when I say that. So historically, punishments were often severe for horse theft, with several cultures pronouncing the sentence of death upon actual or presumed thieves. Think about that. Presumed thieves getting executed for maybe stealing a horse.
Crazy.
So horse thieves were a special type of scumbag back in the day. Horse theft was harshly punished in the French Bordeaux region in the 15th the 15th through 18th centuries. Punishments ranged from whipping to a lifetime sentence of service on a galley ship.
Ugh.
Wow. A severe punishment shared by perpetrators of incest, homicide, and poisoning. So that's your comps there on horse theft. In 19th century Russia, the theft of horses was the most severely punished of any theft on Russian estates due to the importance of horses in day-to-day living. Flogging was the usual punishment for horse thieves, combined with the shaving of heads and beards, and fines of up to 3 times the value of the horse if the animal had already been sold. And one of the wildest examples I touched upon in our Unethical Doctors episode was a guy named Big Nose George. Big Nose George, his real name was George Francis Warden, and he was a horse thief. And in 1878, after a botched job, he and his gang killed a couple of lawmen and fled to Montana. So he wasn't punished just for robbing stagecoaches, trains, and horses. He also killed a couple of lawmen, but it immediately reminded me of this shit, and it was a wild post-mortem for this Big Nose George. He was eventually caught. He was hauled back to Rawlins, Wyoming. He was sentenced to hang for his crimes, and he was lynched almost immediately by an impatient mob. We talked about botched executions before, but he reportedly clung to the telegraph pole he was hung from to save his own life. So they're hanging him, and he grabbed onto it. But gravity eventually dragged him down. He choked to death slowly, and in his struggles, the noose actually ripped off both of his ears.
Yikes.
It's a tough way to go. Then doctors Thomas McGee and John Osborne took possession of George's body after his death to study his brain for clues to his criminality, which is kind of bullshit, but it is what it is. The top of George's skull was sawn off, and the skull cap, was presented to a 16-year-old Lillian Heath, who was a medical assistant to McGee. Heath became the first female doctor in Wyoming and is said to have used the skull cap as an ashtray, sometimes a pen holder, and sometimes a doorstop.
Yikes.
Dr. Osborne had personal reasons for mutilating this body as well. Here's a quote from an assistant. From what I understand, he was on a train that Big Nose George delayed while trying to rob it, and he missed the party. So Dr. Osborne did not like Big Nose George. And this is what he did. Dr. Osborne's payback was special. He peeled the skin off George's dead chest and thighs and made it into a doctor's bag, a coin purse, and a pair of shoes, or rather a half a pair of shoes. The rest of the leather, the darker portion, was cut from the shoes that George was wearing when he choked to death. So this vengeful doctor went on to become a bank chairman, the largest sheep owner in the territory, and the first Democratic governor of the state of Wyoming. He was mighty proud of those shoes, and he wore them to his inauguration. So to sum up, horse theft is bad. It's so bad that you might get fucked with after you're dead.
Yikes.
And the first Democratic governor in Wyoming's history made and then wore a pair of human skin shoes at his inauguration.
What do they call that when
Boom.
you desecrate a body after it's?
I went down a rabbit hole with this, by the way.
Yeah.
And there is a big, I don't know how to people make cover books with human skin quite a bit. Do you know about this?
No.
So there's a
Oh wait,
sub
you know what? We have
culture.
spoken about
Yeah. So a lot of older books, manuscripts that the covers are made by human skin.
They hold up
Yeah.
long.
So there's a society of people who went and tested them. They had found 31 books that were supposedly human skin, and sure enough, 18 of them were.
Right.
The other 13 could have been from animal hides. So there's like this, I can't remember what the hell it was called now because it was an awesome name. But anyway, we'll get into it next week.
But it's like desecrating a body post-mortem. Like there's something there's like
Yeah, I know necrophilia is when you bang it.
Right. No,
Yeah.
but there's like a law where you can't do that. Like,
Oh,
it's-
absolutely
The
not.
fact
Yeah.
that this guy is
Yeah.
getting away with this
Yeah.
is insane.
Horse facts. There are approximately 58 to 60 million horses in the world. That number seems light to me. I thought there'd be more than 60 million horses in the world. There are no breed of horses that are native to North America. Every horse on the North American continent is a descendant of European horses. There may have been horses here before Americans had gotten here, but those breeds had died out, and everyone that exists in North America now are from somewhere else originally. Horses are unable to breathe through their mouths, which I just mentioned to the guys outside. You have something called an epiglottis, which kind of goes back and forth if you're breathing from your mouth or from your nose, going down to your lungs. Horses do not do not have that. The nasal passages in the horse are separated from the oral cavity, so there is no unobstructed pathway from a horse's mouth to its lungs. When foals are born, their hooves are covered with soft tissue to stop them from damaging their mother's birth canal and uterus with their hooves. Names for this tissue include fairy slippers, golden hooves, foal slippers, leaves, gills, and fingers. I attached a picture of what a foal's foot looks like, hoof looks like when it's born,
Yeah.
and it's fucking disgusting.
Yeah, I was looking at the picture trying to figure out what it was.
It is fucking disgusting.
Kind of looks like some sort of like squid almost.
Yeah. And so it falls off, I guess. It says some describe the appearance as a cluster of wet feathers stuck together. It's absolutely disgusting. Horses cannot burp, nor can they vomit. They have a very strong muscle ring called a cardiac sphincter at the entrance to their stomachs. I believe it's like the pylorus muscle that we have, which is essentially a donut that cinches around the entrance into your stomach, so food just doesn't automatically rush up and you vomit it. I know this because one of our sons has pyloric stenosis, where they had to snip the muscle to kind of relax it. Finn had it because he wasn't able to properly, and he was bazooka vomiting when he was a young kid. So horses have this sphincter that's even more strong, that whenever anything gets into their stomach, it's locked in. It doesn't come back out. And the reason is because when horses run, their intestines hammer onto their stomach, causing pressure to build up. And if that sphincter valve opened under the pressure, horses would vomit every time they run. So they don't have any way to vomit or burp. Any kind of gas that builds up in the stomach has to go south. And any type of food that needs to be expelled needs to be shit out.
I don't know if this is something you looked up. Cows, I assume, do cows have the same thing?
No, cows
have
breathe
like
through their
4
mouth.
stomachs.
Yeah, cows have multiple stomachs, and I'm telling you, there are so many things that are physically just horses. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So even when you see horses look like they're laughing when they're up like this, they're showing their teeth. They're actually just smelling around, like trying to use it. They do have a better sense of smell than humans. They also have the largest eyes of any land mammal, and they have 360-degree sight. Because they can, see.
And
all
if
the
you
way
ever want to
around.
know where it's looking, look where its ears are pointing.
Yes, its ears are always pointing where it's looking at. An adult
know
horse's brain weighs 22 ounces. That's about half the size of a human brain. So a horse's teeth take up more space in their head than their brain does. Horses have 205 bones in their body. Humans have 206. Last night, Annie had 207, but one of them was on loan from me.
Attaboy.
So the horses have one less bone, except for Arabian horses. Arabian horses are actually missing a couple of bones by breed. But in general, horses have 205 bones versus our 206. You know what bone they're missing?
I do, but I'm not going to answer.
They're
you.
missing their shoulder blade.
Shoulder
because they have a
blade.
group
Right.
of muscles called a thoracic sling, where humans have not a collarbone.
Clavicle.
Collarbone. Yeah. So where our arms fit into our collarbones, horses have a group of muscles that take the place of that. Because if you had a collarbone as a horse, it would restrict you certain ways where a horse doesn't need those restrictions. The average horse's heart weighs approximately 9 or 10 pounds, whereas a human heart weighs only 10 to 12 ounces. And we all know that Secretariat's heart was a lot bigger than that, weighing 22 pounds. And here's another thing that I want you guys to take away from here, other than the fact that they shoot 2 cup loads. If you go to any type of farm or you're around any type of horses, you'll often see that their tails are bound with tape, right? You see that they bound? If a horse's tail is bound with red tape, that means he has a history he kicks. Never walk behind a horse
He's a
with red
kicker.
tape on his tail. There you go.
They do. They kick
Yeah.
hard.
So
at horse camp, they like told us to, when you go put your hand on its back and kind of walk around it just so it doesn't spook it. Like you said, it could see 360, but they said...
why the fuck did you go to horse camp?
Learn about God. It was
Was it a religious camp?
It was like a Christian horse camp. So we had this like old couple that went to our church, and someone in their family died, but they had a lot of money, so they'd like pay for half your horse camp. They'd pay for they'd pay for half the camp so you could go and experience like the outdoors.
How old were you?
11, 12, 13.
So
Because I went back.
Did you ride the horses?
Oh, I rode.
So you got on
Rebel,
a bus.
Tomahawk, Scarlet.
So
Really?
what? The three of us like grew up around horses. You're the only one that didn't.
I did not. No, I'm a city boy.
I went.
I'm deathly allergic to horses.
She's deathly allergic to.
Down-
I have pictures of him on a horse. It's uncomfortable.
Down around Seymour, Indiana, home of John Cougar Mellencamp.
Boom.
And,
Little big houses.
We'd ride. We'd
So you
fucking
get on a
ride.
bus.
I used to ride all the time.
Hell yeah.
We went on a pack trip into like Yellowstone, just on horseback.
Yeah, you
for
go up there,
like
grab a
month
little
and
bit of their
half.
mane, put your foot in the,
Yeah.
the stirrup. And
And you got to make
fucking-
sure they don't breathe in big, because if you put the saddle on them and they don't like you, they swell up. That way, when you get on their back,
And
they
they
can
can't burp?
spin. They can no, they'll spin the saddle to get
Really?
you off them. Yeah, they'll exhale and
Would
Flip you
11-year-old Vibs have a backpack filled with clean underwear, shorts, and toothpaste and stuff, and you go away for 2 days to some sort of retreat, and then come back with your horse, or was it something? It was a day camp,
whole week, brother.
whole week.
Whole week. First time I think I was. I think it was the first time I was ever like far away from my parents by myself.
Really?
Yeah. Me, Andrew Thornton. He was the one that wanted to do horses. I was like, I don't want to do horses. That's lame.
Are you
brother.
glad you did?
And then we got there, and I was like, "This is fucking awesome."
Yeah, you loved
I'm a cowboy. I ride.
You have spurs.
I know
No.
that horses are used a lot for kids with special needs. Annie and I are going to a. I
Yes.
don't mean to say that about you.
No,
Bibsy.
no, no.
Obviously, you're an elite athlete and a wonderful person.
No, they're
But we're going to a fundraiser next week out in Garden City for my girlfriend, a girl that I grew up with. Went to grammar school with her from kindergarten all the way up to 8th grade. And her daughter was born with microcephaly, and it winds up she has this thing called CASK, C-A-S-K. And I think she's one of only 235 people in the world that has it. And it strikes mostly females because it's attacks the X chromosome. And one of the things that she does for the special needs camp, and it's prevalent, it's everywhere. They put these kids with special needs on horses. It's a calming effect for them. It works their core, like to a certain degree,
Yeah.
like giving them something. And it's like something to do that's very exciting for them. I love the fact that exists. You know what I mean?
feel. It's probably a bad example, but it's
Go.
like having a gun. You just feel powerful. You're
You
sitting
do.
up high.
course.
You're one with the horse. It's great. But yeah, we'd do like arena stuff, and we'd also do trail stuff. The trail stuff's awesome because
Yeah.
you're going down like fucking cliffs
It's a
and
lean
hills,
back,
and you're
right?
kind of leaning back. But there was this last day of camp. We went to this like special area. It sounds like I'm.
Is that what they
I'm
called
about to
it?
get touched. No, we went to this like special area, and it's like. I don't know, Dances with Wolves. It's just this prairie that just stretches forever. And the instructor's like, all right, we're going to gallop. And we were just, for about, 300 yards, just galloping full speed. And we were.
Was it beautiful?
For that minute, I was free.
You were Yellowstone.
Yeah,
Bibsy.
just took
It's
put my
see-
hands out. And,
Yeah, in Seymour, Indiana.
Was
What
your
did you
hair
say?
long and it's
No,
Yellowstone, Bibsy.
it was probably like a buzz cut. I had super short hair back then. But yeah, I remember just being like, this is going to be the worst week of my life, a horse camp. And I went, and I'm a rider ever since.
So you went
That's awesome.
11, 12, 13, 14. You probably went there 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, back to back. Yeah, it was awesome.
awesome.
And then for like 2 hours a day, you had to learn about Jesus, which kind of was lame.
Okay.
They'd make you carry around. Like a log, like a piece of wood, and like that's sin. And then at the end of the day, they'd take it away and you'd throw it in the fire, and like Jesus died, so you didn't have to carry that log around. And you're like, wow.
Symbolism. Wow,
Yeah,
that's
but it was
right.
the worst day ever because it's 90 degrees in the summer and you're just carrying around a log around this fucking camp
All right. After
Yeah.
you just got off a horse.
after you just got off a horse. Yeah.
So we
it will-
mentioned at the top of the show where John was saying it seemed overly violent and sometimes unnecessary when horses would break their legs. And, there's just that everyone knows they get put down, sent to the glue factory or whatever the hell they do. Why is that? And there are several reasons. Horses develop problems in their hooves if they don't move around enough or are forced to put weight on only 3 legs. So too much pressure on the other 3 hooves can cause severe pain, swelling, and separation of the bone from the hoof. So if you're trying to rehab something, you say just favor the other 3 hooves. I'm talking to a horse right now. The horse would be unable to do that. But why can't you make them rest while they heal is the obvious next question to ask. And horses can't lay down for a long period of time. It's not a myth that horses sleep standing up. They also sleep laying down, but they sleep laying down for very short periods of time. They spend most of their time standing up. And
they'll develop colic.
Yes,
And that's
exactly.
common too. That's a common ailment with horses.
Because the pressure from their own body, if they were to be laying down, restricts blood flow because they're so fucking heavy, right? Like you said, they're a thing on toothpicks.
Is colic like gout? Is that like a...
Dogs get it
Nothing's
too.
worse
It's
than
like when
colic.
your stomach turns basically into like knots. Is the best
Oh,
way
it's
I
your
can
stomach.
describe
It's not your
it.
hooves?
No, it's stomach.
Hooves?
Within 2 to 4 hours,
I believe. I think so.
Within 2 to 4 hours of a horse not being able to move from side to side, they can develop muscle and nerve damage. Wow. In surgery, horses are often kept on giant foam pads to help reduce the pressure on their body. And keep in mind, since bones take months to heal, a horse cannot realistically be in bed to wait for that because it'll just die. And the other option is a sling for a horse to stand stationary and upright while it heals, but those slings create challenges with pressure sores and excessive pressure on their breathing.
Yeah, it's a time and energy and money thing too. I mean,
Sure.
If you like, they've tried it. Barbaro, one of the most famous cases where they tried everything to save this horse because the owners are obviously wealthy and they could fund this. And there was a lot of support to try and save this horse. They shipped it to the University of Pennsylvania. They tried every surgery. So it's hard to do this. So you can't really do it.
They probably had it in a pool for hours for weightless rehabilitation, right? Like
it would be like, unfortunately, if your dog got like terminal cancer, would you try, would you ship it off to Europe to try experimental, stuff? Probably not.
Right.
I would not.
Yeah.
I'd take her to the farm where she's playing with other dogs forever. Just give me a reason. But to your point, John, it does seem awfully heartless and nonsensical because these people pay millions of dollars for these horses and all of a sudden they break their legs and you got to kill them. But that's the reason why. There are other issues including dietary concerns, gastrointestinal effects, but in short, it's very, very hard to heal a broken bone in an animal that needs to constantly keep using that bone in order to survive. And when a horse breaks a bone in their leg, they tend to panic and want to run and flail, and that flailing can do more injuries, rip muscles, tear joints, and it's not uncommon that the bone rips through the skin, and in some horses they flail so much from one broken leg that they oftentimes break a second one. So you really for people who want to know why they put horses down so easily when they break their legs, you got to. I think it's the most humane thing to do, unfortunately for the breed.
It's not like you could sit down and reason with it with a little brain that's a couple ounces.
That was another thing we did at horse camp is we practiced putting down. Yeah.
No, you didn't.
You did
That
not.
would be awesome.
That'd be
That would be
crazy.
awesome if
Give-
11-year-old Vibs with a rivet gun, like an air, but poof, just putting these things down.
Put it right to the
Mate.
temple there.
Like, yeah,
Good
he's-
job, Jevy.
He's working in an abattoir. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Let's talk about horse murders. Is that cool? Yeah. But first, Simply Safe. When you travel, do concerns of home nag you? Did you lock up? Did you leave a window open? That's why I recommend investing in Simply Safe Home Security today for award-winning security and peace of mind wherever your summer plans take you. Simply Safe was named Best Home Security Systems 2024 by the U.S. News & World Report, and Newsweek ranked it Best Customer Service in Home Security. Whole home protection, sensors to detect break-ins, fires, floods, and more, and a variety of indoor and outdoor cameras. It's backed by 24/7 professional monitoring for less than $1 a day. There's no contracts and a 60-day money-back guarantee. I always tell the story about how we got Sienna be mauled
Why
by
do
a
you
German
laugh?
Shepherd. I apologize. Just that it happened. Thank you, Simply Safe.
I thought about that the other day. I saw a video of a guy getting chased by a German Shepherd, and he hops on this woman's car to get away from it. Thought about you getting attacked by a German Shepherd.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would have the wherewithal to do that.
Plus, you had 2 dogs in tow.
Well,
We have the
really,
footage.
I
you were
punched it.
saved by Simply Safe.
We were saved by
yeah.
Simply Safe. Yeah. So Simply
I
Safe is
punched the dog, by the way.
yes.
I didn't know what to do.
I know.
You got to get away. You got to do something.
But I mean, like, if we had a problem with the police officers who came to the house or the people. Like, for people who don't remember the story, Annie and our 2 dogs were attacked by a German Shepherd that had run out of the house, somebody on our block. By the time the cops had come and everybody was safe and sound, the cops then went over to, we would show them the footage from Simply Safe, and the cops went over to address with the neighbors that had the dog. We were relatively new to the neighborhood. We didn't know anybody. And by the time they got to our neighbors, within an hour or so, they had already taken the dog to be put down. So the dog was dead within an hour of biting my wife and dogs. Not something that I wanted them to do, but
They're like, it didn't bite you. I'm like, yeah.
And the little French bulldogs still has the puncture wounds. Like, they never grew back.
I saw pictures of that.
It is what it is. Simply Safe has given me and many of my listeners real peace of mind. I want you to have that too. So get 20% off any new Simply Safe system when you sign up for Fast Protect Monitoring. Just visit simplysafe.com/twisted. That's simplysafe.com/twisted. There's no safe like Simply Safe. All right, so we're going to talk about horse murderers. I'm just talking about people who died in and around horses. There are no nefarious plans where horses had bought guns and gone after people.
We're going to lead off with Godfather.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was the leader of the largest contiguous empire in the history of the world. He died by falling off his horse. Genghis Khan was a badass, right? I mean, he sired more people.
So you're trying to claim the horse murdered Genghis Khan?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Geronimo, ever hear of him?
It was an inside job.
Yeah. Geronimo was a leader of the Apache, or one brand of the Apache, I apologize, who fought against Mexico and Texas for several decades during the Apache Wars. He was thrown from his horse while riding home, and he lay in the cold all night, contracting pneumonia, from which he died. Geronimo and Genghis Khan were killed by horses. Louis III, Louis IV, and Louis V all died falling off of horses. The fourth and the fifth were both on hunts at separate times, and that's how they died, falling off their horses. But Louis III was a cheeky little monkey, and he died while chasing after a girl. He followed her on horseback into a house, and he hit his head off the doorway, and that's how he fucking died, Louis III. But the third, fourth, and fifth all died on horseback. Remember Robert the Bruce from Braveheart? He was the guy who was to become the next king. Like,
yeah.
Like, he didn't have the bravery until they put him.
I know he's got a Scottish ale named after him. I know that.
Yeah, Angus MacFadyen, I think, was the guy who played him. But yeah, so it'll ring a bell. Robert the Bruce, his pregnant daughter, Marjorie Bruce, fell off her horse while she was pregnant, causing premature labor. She died, but the baby survived and grew up to be the King of Scotland, Robert II. It's a happy ending. Oleg of Novgorod. We never spoke about him when we did the Twisted History of Vikings, but Oleg the Wise was what they called him. He was a 9th century prince of Kiev. It was prophesied by the pagan priests that Oleg would meet his maker from his stallion. That's what happened when he was born. They said, you will die from your stallion. So to avoid the prophecy, Oleg sent his prize stallion away. Many years later, he asked where his horse was and was told that that horse had died. He asked to see the remains, was taken to the place where this dead horse's bones lay, and when he touched the horse's skull with his boot, a snake slithered from the skull and bit Oleg the Wise. Oleg died, thus fulfilling the prophecy that he died inadvertently from his stallion. And perhaps the most famous horse murder of all is how I'm going to close this podcast. And it's, unfortunately, I'm going to tell you the story again of Kenneth Pinyon, a.k.a. Mr. Hands. Remember this?
Oh, geez, Mr. Hands.
So this was very early. When we first started doing Twisted History, Annie and I were always kind of fucking around with the idea of doing Twisted History. When it first started, she was almost going to do it with a friend. And I said, no, let me fuck around with it. And she was like, yeah, it's a better idea. This was before you would even come in when we were taping it. And it was me and Vibsy at the very beginning. So we did Kamikazes first. And sooner or later, we did Bestiality.
It was like our 4th episode.
It was very early.
Very, right?
Very early.
Yeah, very, very early. We went Bestiality.
That's why I used to send you pages and pages and pages and pages and pages.
This was before the pandemic tried to kill us.
Yes,
That's right.
exactly.
Right around the same time, though.
Was that 2020?
It was December.
We started literally.
December 2019 was the first episode.
Right.
Yeah. And then a few months later,
Yeah.
we were all on Zoom.
I don't even know what episode we're on now.
Over 200, I think.
Yeah.
Are we?
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure.
So.
Look at us.
So anyway, Kenneth Pinyon. So for people who weren't here from the beginning, I did speak about this in the Twisted History of Bestiality. Phibbs and I were both hosting that. Annie, you weren't in the office, I don't believe, that time. John obviously was here.
Was that with? I remember Patty gave us this.
When I had mentioned bestiality, Patty had said right away.
Oh. I thought you were just talking about what episode he was on.
Patty
Saturday Night Live.
Patty may have even had a blog about Mr. Hands.
Yeah. He's the one who gave me the story originally.
The Seattle Times reported a story in 2005 called the Enumclaw Horse Sex Case, which is one of the paper's most read stories of the year. 2 years later, a documentary entitled Zoo debuted at the 2007 Sundance Film Festival. John, have you seen the movie Zoo?
No.
Put it on your list to see.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it either, but I just want to make sure you do.
When you brought up Caligula, I thought there was going to be like a Mr. Hands situation with that.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Got sexual with the horse.
By the way, go back and listen to the Caligula episode, too, because the Roman Emperor episode was pretty interesting. And then we did something where we talked about the movie Caligula, which was like very close to being hardcore porn.
We
Helen
were
Mirren
debating,
was in it.
Yeah. We were going back and forth. We could actually we could revisit so many of them.
We could redo episodes
We really could.
and like tighten them up. You know,
Oh,
like
we
the
always
Luby's
said-
cafeteria thing. Like didn't you or am I crazy? Like Luby's cafeteria that we spoke about at the beginning of the show with
Yeah.
the fact that the woman who became the representative to I found that to be fascinating.
Definitely, and I think
right?
people also expand on them. Like you're only able to know what you read and how deep dive you go into so many things.
Right.
But then other people are intimate with the story themselves, and they're like, "Yeah, but you don't know this side." Like
Yeah.
with 9/11, I could give so many ins and outs of things people would never know. John with horses, you with camp. I mean, it's like as soon as you get people interacting, like that's why I love the comments so much.
It's like, it's how they can get away with doing like World War II docs like every
Right.
2 years. It's like, haven't we
Every
run out of
day.
stuff? And it's
Every
like,
day.
no, like there's so
Yeah.
many
Yeah.
angles you can approach it from.
We still have to do fires, right? Like we have the fire one. We have the amount of information.
It's a tease.
It's a part 4, I think.
Airplane crashes and fires.
Oh,
By the way, the
Yeah.
Phipps guy, Ogden Phipps,
Yeah.
that's where Phipps Plaza came from in Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
Get out.
We just
Same
go to Phipps
family.
Plaza. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because this is interesting. I got it slightly right.
Go ahead.
Phipps, the original Phipps, grew up with Andrew Carnegie as a friend and neighbor, and then they started Carnegie Steel Company together.
That's
So that's
awesome.
where it all connects. It's pretty crazy.
Imagine having
That is
money
awesome.
like that.
Yeah.
All that FU money.
But yeah, go if you want to go down Wikipedia. That's a good one.
And while you're there, look up the documentary entitled Zoo, which did well at the 2000 Sun. So the film was one of the winners at the festival. It was presented at Cannes the same year. In the docu-film, there was a clip called Two Guys, One Horse, which obviously spurred Two Girls, One Cup. It was the collected video of Kenneth Pinyon, also known as Mr. Hands. It's funny that they name him Mr. Hands because horses are measured in hands, which I believe are 4-inch increments, right? 4 inches is this big, right?
4 inches is a lot bigger than that.
So
Sir.
his name was Mr. Hands. By day, Mr. Hands was seemingly normal. He was a long-term engineer at Boeing, worked there for 8 years. Previously, he'd even been married and fathered multiple children. For an undisclosed reason, he relocated from Seattle to Washington State. I don't know what that means. Anyway, so he was in Washington State. Mr. Hands was Kenny's nickname, and his fellow zoophile friends. So zoophiles, for people who don't know, a pedophile is somebody that goes after pets, kids. A zoophile is someone who has an attraction or sexual preference for animals. How did Kenny end up fucking horses, you may ask? I got the answer. Nerve damage from a motorcycle accident had left Kenny unable to feel certain sensations. So he started experimenting with things just so he could feel something. He started with large dildos. It moved on to fisting and other extreme sexual acts. So when he found out a group of men calling themselves zoos online in early 2005, he started meeting up with them for weekends at an unincorporated farm in King County, Washington State. If you love large dildos, you're going to love something with a 2-foot cock, right?
Sounds like you're promoting something that you have on the Barstool store.
Yeah. The
It's a large
unincorporated area that I just mentioned is an important little tidbit because a law dating back over 3 decades. In 1970s, Washington State kind of accidentally made bestiality legal. It happened in 1974 when this law was repealed. There was a law in the book that said every person who shall carnally know in any manner any animal or bird, or should carnally know any male or female person by the anus or with the mouth or tongue, or who shall voluntarily submit to such knowledge, or who shall attempt sexual intercourse with a dead body shall be guilty of sodomy. That was something that was on the books in Washington State. So included anal sex. So when people repealed that law, they also repealed the part of the law that said you couldn't fuck animals, right? So
Well, it had to do with homosexuality.
homosexuality,
Right.
yeah. Like they went in there and said, no, listen, this is how we do it.
They just never thought about it.
This
They
is
weren't
how we
like,
get
oh,
down.
that people
It was
aren't
an
gonna start
older
banging
law,
animals.
so they took it off the books. And by taking it off the books, they also took off that part of the law that said that you cannot carnally know in any manner any animal or bird.
And from that section of Washington, you heard a little cheer. Yay!
But yeah, so it made you able to carnally know somebody by the anus. So they were repealing it because that law had made anal and oral sex illegal, and that was outdated. So you fast forward to the early 2000s, and we have a group of 3 men sneaking off to an unincorporated land to skirt any of the laws in which they could get into trouble by engaging in sexual activity with livestock, and that's what the zoos did on the weekends when they met up. The men would also film videos of each other being sodomized by horses to post online, and on occasion they would sex with each other also. How nice. For an undisclosed amount of time, the men did this without incident until the incident that we're about to speak of. James Michael Tate, Kenneth Pinyon, as I'd mentioned, Mr. Hands, and a third man were doing their thing. When it was Kenneth's turn to be penetrated by a stallion, he suffered internal injuries during the act. Again, Kenneth didn't have the proper nerve endings to realize that not only was this horse fucking him in the ass, it was tearing his insides to pieces. Oh, shit.
Good God.
Right? So he suffered internal injuries. They rushed him to the hospital and left him. They dropped him off in the lobby of the
Rolling
hospital
stock, they call
and got the fuck out. Pinyon died in the emergency room at the age of 45. The medical examiner's office said that his cause of death was acute peritonitis due to a perforated colon. An investigation was opened after Pinyon died. Using his license and the hospital surveillance camera, they found Tate, and police officers were able to track down his other associate and the exact farm area where they were trespassing on. But due to that law change I mentioned above, the illegality of the situation was basically non-existent. It was only after Pinyon died when law enforcement looked for one way to punish these people. And since the legality of bestiality came into, question, all they could get him on was fucking trespassing. I mean,
Right.
he aided and abetted in a horsing fucking a man to death, and he got slapped on the wrist for trespassing. After the trial, Tate was charged with criminal trespassing in the first degree. His sentence was relatively light, seeing as Mr. Hands was dead. And James Michael Tate was arrested and charged with animal cruelty again in 2009. To this day, the people of Enumclaw, Washington, do not speak of this event. Right? Naturally, right? Well, some say that since the culture of Enumclaw is such a horse-positive community and everyone there is a horse person or a horse enthusiast, it's not surprising that somebody was fucking a horse there, but nobody wants to speak about it. As you can imagine, it's like building a house on an Indian graveyard or something.
I'm sure they use all those lines that we first spoke about, like, oh, did you know that this came from horse? I'm sure there's a lot of those, like with his cock. Like we use those.
Yeah,
I'm sure
but I
there's
mean,
a lot of,
like when
play on
Bonnie and
words.
Clyde died, they brought, they put the, the car in a museum, and they had people come by to see the dead bodies. Like people do celebrate tragedy, particularly, going to battlefields and whatnot, right?
Well, the cops were happy about that because they had killed police officers, so they put out the photos and all that.
Oh, yeah,
They were-
yeah.
they were
Right,
super
right,
pissed.
Yeah.
What?
No, Bonnie and Clyde.
Bonnie
With Bonnie
and
and Clyde. Yeah. Like since they were outlaws,
Yeah.
you're almost parading
Yeah.
around
Of
an
course.
outlaw's body. Like, yeah.
I am
But
100%
not-
behind.
yeah.
I get
They
that.
didn't-
Yeah.
You're saying
Yeah,
they didn't
Bibsy
erect
thought that
the
there were cops
statue
who
of
were
this
happy
guy.
about this guy getting fucked to death by a horse.
yeah.
Erect a statue of this guy and make him the butt of the joke.
But after Pinyon's death, there was a bill passed that banned bestiality, and now it's declared a Class C felony, and no one opposed the law, thank God. So we closed this podcast. We started this podcast saying how horses were integral to the development of all modern societies and how important they were. And we ended it saying, as much as you need to respect horses and learn about their physiology and stuff, don't ever get fucked by one, right?
No.
All All right, that's it for the Twisted History of Horses. I want to thank Annie. I want to thank Vibs. And I want to thank John for putting it together. I don't know what we're going to do next time, but we'll figure it out now. I'm still throwing around the idea of what were we going to do?
We were going to do conspiracy theories.
Conspiracies, yeah. Or
We
maybe
have
just
it.
break
We
down a
have a
couple
lot.
of them.
Yeah. Did you see the Reddit thread about like missing Twisted History?
No.
I don't think people really know that we're like back.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we how
Yeah,
we
tell a friend.
people.
Yeah, I got to get it out there a little bit more because I didn't see that Reddit thread. I would have liked to. Because like it's a labor of love for us, and obviously at some point maybe we'll start doing it a little bit more regularly. But I just like kind of hanging out and chatting with you guys.
And text me if
every
you
couple
like,
of
or
weeks.
DM me like topics because we could do it.
Yeah.
I love doing the listener submissions ones. They're so much fun.
Yeah, I love doing those episodes too. Anything to plug while we're here?
Just lock your barn door at night. Get Simply Safe.
Absolutely.
You never know what's out there.
So Rubbin will be in Charlotte this week. So tune into all that type of madness.
Wonton Don has some Hong Kong videos we shot in Hong Kong together.
Really?
And it's coming out. I think the 29th is the first one.
Okay.
Some of your pictures you posted were amazing.
Yeah,
They're
I'll
incredible.
post some more video.
Yeah.
Hong Kong's awesome.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
We
It's
had
like
a good
New York.
time. We had a good time at the Camel and stuff like that.
That
Like
was
John and
fun.
I have been doing, and we're actually ramping up the boxing coverage.
Yep.
So we had just covered Ryan Garcia, and then we did the Canelo Alvarez fight. I got the fucking tattoo, and then we just covered the Fury Usyk fight.
We got Tyson and Paul coming up.
Tyson Paul coming up. We have Paige Van Zandt we just had in today. We had Eddie Hearn in today. I'm covering some darts thing next week that's
Am I-
going on in
hell yeah.
the MSG.
Darts is
Yeah.
going to be fun.
Yeah.
I
We
love,
have
are
a
you going to that this
17-year-old
time?
professional
That's
dart
fun.
player. 17-year-old professional dart player. This kid, Luke Littler. doesn't
I
look
watched
17.
him. I watched him last year, I think.
Yeah.
Win it.
He'll be
Or
here.
Win something.
He'll be here next week, and I'll drop something with him before.
That guy's the man.
Yeah, he's supposed to be the man.
I don't know if this is the Ryan Garcia fight. How much did the doping affect that fight? Because I thought people were saying he was going to get.
But we don't know
destroyed.
now because today that
They came out and said
B,
the blood sample B
Right.
was positive.
It's Ostarine, right?
yeah,
so,
what is-
so apparently Ostarine isn't one of those things where you get like an immediate boost from it, and allegedly the amount of Ostarine that he had in his system shouldn't have been, it's like negligible, but it's still a banned substance and it's still illegal for him to have it in his system. Plus he came in over 3 pounds overweight.
Right.
So he was never fighting for a belt. So now all Devin Haney is doing, the guy who lost, is trying to have this removed from his record. Like have it as a no contest, which he definitely has a leg to stand on there.
They weren't talking about a rematch. Does this potentially indicate that they could look for a rematch?
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
whole idea, if I was Devin Haney, I would play
'Cause
the
he was kind of fucked.
I would play the narrative that Ryan Garcia doesn't. And listen, I like Ryan Garcia, but if I was Devin Haney, I wouldn't want to fight him again because Ryan dominated that fight. So
Well, I
Devin
meant-
should use this as an excuse to say no
I meant
rematch.
fucked like who was he going to fight next kind of thing.
Yeah.
So-
Well, Devin's a belt holder, and it's an interesting weight class. So there are other big names that are there, but it's not over the drama surrounding this since the fight was a huge upset and whatnot. But I don't know if we're going to get to see that one run back. But there's too much fights. There's too many great boxing matches almost every weekend because of this guy Turki Al-Sheikh in Saudi Arabia has opened up his wallet and he's put some fucking fights together that are dream fights for me. So John and I have really ramped up the boxing coverage alongside the Zone. We might be doing something with PBC as well. So stay tuned for
I have
that.
a question for you. Ostarine, how does it get into your system if you don't inject it or intentionally put it in? It's not like a tainted sausage.
Yeah, well, according to Ryan, Eddie Hearn had snuck in and injected it into his blood test. So I don't know how it is.
I
Like,
also don't know if
yeah,
he
I
was
don't-
joking, but he had tweeted a picture of something because you can go to GNC and
Right.
pick something
It was like
up
a pill.
that you don't know everything's in it or somebody gives you. So he had sort of tried to get it seemingly ahead of this and said like, oh, this was it. I don't know what product he was holding.
Yeah.
Some sort
Okay.
of supplement.
So
if
he
you will.
took something and it would just happen to
Yeah.
He
have
could have
it.
been
in it.
joking too, though. So I
No,
don't
no.
know.
Right, you
so
never know
the
with
thing
him.
that he was
Yeah.
holding up was the name of it sounded a lot like ayahuasca. What the hell is it called?
Yeah, it was something. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's something like that, which does have trace amounts of it. So he said he might have got it from drinking that tea,
Right.
or something. So we don't know. And, there's a good chance with professional athletes, it's not bullshit. They don't know what's being put into their bodies. Like people are giving them supplements and all that stuff all the time. So you don't know whether or not you're actively taking something legal or he's a scumbag that blatantly cheated. And in boxing, It's especially bad because you can easily kill somebody.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean?
We know those stories.
Yeah. So, Twisted
No,
History of
give
Boxing
them
with
the
Jerry
water
Cooney.
that I gave.
People say, do the Twisted History of Boxing. We did the Twisted History, but it's called the Twisted History of the Sweet Science.
Right. Jerry Cooney did that one with
So
you.
if you're looking
But
for
we
Twisted
haven't
History of
done it.
Boxing, yeah, we could definitely do. I could talk about boxing for days. All right, so that's it. Always a pleasure with you dudes and young lady, and that's a wrap.